system. You do that, you do some sort of a statistical project. If we want to do a statistical project or a
All these
study,
lectures get
we
recorded
have to
for
do
online.
all of those things. And this is kind of a cookie cutter approach that the book offers. It says, hey, you got to do these things if you're going to conduct a study. You got to identify what you're interested in. You got to figure out how you're going to collect your data. And that's no small task most of the time. You have to collect the data, and then you got to organize it and describe it, and then you got to interpret it. And then at the very end, identify any possible errors because things could pop out in the course of this study. But that's basically a little bit more detail for those 4 steps. Now, one of the big first steps, obviously, is to figure out how you're going to collect data and then collect data. And if we think about the way we can collect data, there's a couple of different ways that we can actually get data. There's actually 4 different ways we're going to talk about. Observational study, experiment, survey, and simulation. So let me just talk briefly about all 4 of these. And I don't intentionally try to talk like a radio announcer fast just to get through this stuff, but the book actually has good explanations of this. You know, if you listen and get it, you can look at the book, look at my notes. But an observational study is pretty easy. We go out and we look at things, or we record them. We don't try to, as a researcher, intrude on the situation. We just observe. We're interested in the traffic flow at a particular intersection. We go out and we count the cars. We don't get in the middle. We don't try to direct traffic. We don't try to change the lanes. We don't do anything. Okay, we just observe. Okay. Researchers here observe and record the mouthing behavior on non-food objects in children up to 3 years old. This is kind of a child education study, right? You just look, you watch, and you observe. There's a great engineering kind of not a fable, but an idea that says, how do you know where to build sidewalks? Kane, you have any idea if you're a civil engineer? Where would you build sidewalks?
Next to the road.
Well, the fable is you just watch and see where the grass gets beaten down and they put a sidewalk there, right? I mean, that's the best place to put a sidewalk because that's where the people are going to walk regardless if you have a sidewalk there or not, okay? So the idea is if you observe and just collect data from observing, you can actually learn quite a bit. Another way we can collect data would be to conduct an experiment. Now, an experiment, we as a researcher probably would impose ourselves on the process somehow. If we were developing a new drug or medication, we might say, okay, well, I'm going to get a lot of people together, and I'm going to give all you people the drug, and I'm not going to give these people the drug, but I'm kind of imposing myself on the whole thing. I'm designing an experiment, right? I'm not just observing. And at the end, though, I'm going to compare how you folks do with how these people do. So the researcher somehow imposes a treatment of some sort, or a factor, actually, we call it, on part of the sample. Here's an experiment about diabetics in terms of taking cinnamon extract. So you can conduct an experiment. Another way that we conduct and collect data is a simulation. Now, a simulation is usually done because collecting the data is too expensive, too difficult, too time-consuming, something like that. So we like computers. I mean, the example up here, how many people have seen the TV ads where they crash cars into a solid wall going 40 miles an hour, and they say, oh, man, don't buy a smart car because the smart car lost when it hit the wall, right? And you've seen them probably on TV. Well, the reason you use dummies in those cars is because there's not a lot of good volunteers who said, let me sit in that car while it crashes into the wall at 40 miles an hour. And it's hard to find volunteers that are going to do that, right? And they have big hospital bills after that. So that's why you use the dummies. You use computer models, okay? you know, somebody wants to do an experiment and say, okay, well, I wonder what the impact of releasing some sort of a new influenza virus will be on Los Angeles. Well, you know, you can't do that experiment, okay? So you run computer models, okay, to see how a virus would spread, and you collect data based on the computer models, okay? So you do that with flight patterns, okay? You do with traffic engineers do that, because you can't build a new road, fill it up with cars, and, you know, see if it works, okay? So you do a lot of these things with simulation when it's too hard, too expensive, too difficult, too costly, too dangerous, right? So we would do simulation. And then the last way we can collect data is a survey. The survey is commonly done a number of ways. Either by an interview, long list of questions, maybe mail or telephone, or on this list here, but not, I mean, more commonly now is over the internet. But a comment on internet surveys that really is near and dear to my heart, that I can't figure out. I actually am bothered, but not bothered, but I mean, the work I did before, it's a difficult question. What's wrong with internet surveys, generally speaking? Anybody know? Have you ever taken an internet survey? Have you ever taken a survey that was over the internet and oh, click on these 5 buttons? Well, if you haven't, I mean, it's pretty easy. There's lots of surveys on the internet. And once in a while, something will come out and we would like to have you take a survey and do this. Okay? What's wrong with generally internet surveys? Anybody worry about internet surveys? Yeah, Matthew?
They only cater to a specific portion of the population.
They only cater to a specific portion of the population. They're absolutely self-selecting. In other words, you have no control as a researcher whether the person takes it or not, okay? And in a lot of cases, you have no goddamn idea who's filling out the survey. And I don't mean to be rude about it, but it's very difficult. I mean, you know. And so in market research, there's a bit of a conundrum right now, if you think about it. It's like, okay, well, we would like to do a survey to see how people are going to respond to our new product, or how they like our new product. So you say, oh, we'll intercept a bunch of people, we'll try to screen them and make sure we have the right person and stuff. And then some young person comes in and they say, well, why don't we put a survey on the internet? Just put it out there, put the product out there, and we'll ask them a bunch of questions, okay? And so then the conundrum is that in the historical world of research like this, you would have some control over who you're talking to. I know who Jamie is. I mean, I know she's in the store, she bought the product, blah, blah, blah. In the internet, you might get like, you know, 2,000 responses in one day, but you really, a lot of times, don't know who the people are. And so the conundrum is the control versus the volume of feedback that you get. You might get a lot of feedback on the internet. But anyway, the point is that the internet is definitely the uphill. And you're seeing more and more of that because the other stuff is so expensive. So we do surveys, okay? Most surveys are what we call attitudinal. And what I mean by attitudinal is like how people feel about something. All right, so let me throw up a problem here with that in mind, and we'll continue the lecture tonight. Maybe going back